what kind of drew you to public policy, right? And if you can tell us a little bit.
I'll be honest, my family was into politics, my father, my grandfather, all of them. But when I finished my education and came back to India, I didn't want to join the family business. And I started my own company, that is ITV Network. And we started from scratch, from a vernacular newspaper, then went into television, then we expanded on the papers, we expanded on the news channels, websites. It was a journey of about 16 years before I decided to join politics. And it was that journey which actually made me look at things very differently. You see, as a media entrepreneur, one of the basic fundamental premises is that you are not in it for the money alone. It's not the best way to become rich. So it is, you have to have that sense of purpose. You have to have that sense of, that mindset that you want to make a change, bring about a change in society, and also do some good. For a country of our size and scale, we really need to do a lot. And basically the thought started from there. There was an opportunity that came up and where it wasn't planned. I wasn't planning to get into politics. But I felt that if you want to make a change in society and in the structure and policy, you have to be a part of it. You cannot sit outside the structure and bring about those changes. You have your parts to play as a media entity, and you do that, wherever that's required. But there's only so much you can do sitting on the outside. So that's where the entire thought process came about. And I was in England for about 9 years, and that was a period where India was on a cusp. We were liberalizing the economy was opening up, there was a lot of investment coming, India was really changed a lot. If I'm not wrong, in 1991 we had 2 news channels in the country. Today we have about 397 news channels in the country. So that is the transition we saw from that period to now. And it was a very interesting period to see everything from abstract. When I was studying in England, I could see how India was changing and evolving. And when you were in abstract, you tend to focus more and see the differences more, vis-a-vis when you are in the middle of things, right? And that was something where I realized that India is going to change forever. And I wanted to be a part of that change. I wanted to contribute to that change. And that was the main reason that I came to politics.
That's amazing. Thank you. Building on to that, when I was in the bus, someone asked me saying, can you tell us what was different in the India that you were growing up in India today? I would kind of put that question onto you as well.
A lot of difference. I mean, our perspective was very different. We used to have just one channel at that point of time as kids, which would run for 2 hours or 3 hours a day. The infrastructure was very different. Our outlook to the world was very different. I remember as a kid traveling to the US or Europe, and it was a different world altogether. We used to really look forward. I mean, everything from infrastructure to products to facilities to healthcare. It's a world of a difference. I mean, from what we grew up to where we have come today. It's a very, very different. I mean, I'll give you an example. During the COVID crisis. Now, something like that happens once in a century. It's not something that happens very regularly. During the COVID crisis, I mean, I as an individual wasn't very sure that how India as a country will be able to engage with something of that size and magnitude, which pretty much took the whole world by surprise. And most of the developed economies also sort of faced the same problems that the rest of the world was facing. But having said that, India, for its population of 1.4 billion people, and is still making progress, but we're not a developed economy. So everything is not in place, the infrastructure is not in place, the healthcare sector is not in place to the extent you would expect a developed economy to be. And the way we tackled the problem, I think that stands as a testament to how India has changed. Not only did we manage to tackle the issue, of course, when you have a pandemic of that size and scale, no matter of readiness or preparedness can actually counter such a situation, but you have to make the best of it. Going away from that, not only countering the pandemic, but creating our own vaccine, which was not only administered to the 1.4 billion population, but we exported more than 200 million vaccines to the whole world. Now, from a point in time where we had one television channel which ran for 2 hours to becoming a vaccine developer which is selling it to the, not selling it, free of cost, giving it to the world, I think it's a long journey that we have covered in the last 20, 30 years.
Of course. No, that sums it up really well. Again, peeling that onion a little more, a lot has been said about India and, our development, etc. From someone who is, in the engine room, what do you think are, A, the bottlenecks that you see for us to move forward? And B, could you kind of also touch upon the geopolitics, the current geopolitics, right? The war in Israel, the war in Russia, and how India is kind of balancing all of that, but also what you foresee, right, coming out of this?
See, you've touched upon two issues. I'll take them one by one. See, how we've come here and what are the challenges. For you to understand that, you have to also understand a historical perspective of India. Where are we coming from and what have we achieved and where are we going? So there was a former prime minister who very infamously said that we send 1 rupee from Delhi and only 15 paise reaches the last mile, which means 85% of the monies gets lost in translation. So we are coming from a background that was the situation of India, to now where we are the world's largest digital banking system. I'm talking about UPI, which is the world's largest digital banking system now. I'll just quote one or two figures to you to give some context. So as of last month, we had 10 billion transactions on the UPI platform. Wow. And just to give a context, the US Cash App had 587 million transactions in the entire year. So just to give you a context of the size and scale of how things have sort of changed. And when you bring about a change of that size and scale in a country like India, you have to understand that you have to have a bottom-up approach, and these changes don't happen overnight. They take time, effort, dedication, design, and continuous policy, which is to be implemented over a long period of time. So where you have a country of the size and scale and the diversity that we have in India, and the other challenges that come with it, to bring in a digital transformation system which allows you to give monies to people directly is something, and bring them in the banking network and the banking net itself. So we've had more than 500 million bank accounts which have opened in the last few years, which is basically empowering people, giving them their monies directly, which is what the intention of the government has been. So a digital transformation for a country like India means a lot more than a developed country, because you are actually enabling the people and giving them what they need to get from the government, which is what the government's intention is. So to understand it, in a holistic manner, I think you have to understand that, we are plagued with multiple problems. We had issues when it came to food security. We had issues regarding, women factors, hygiene factors, safety, and so on and so forth. So to bring about institutional changes of that scale, you have to start right at the bottom. So UPI is a very good way of empowering people. I'll give you another example, just from UPI itself, right? So now UPI, not only does it give you the ability to bring people into the tax net and give them the monies directly, and have data which helps you to make policy, which will actually help people, which has not been the case, because most of the policy which was being made was devoid of any sort of content, any sort of real aspects of the information. So all of that put together helps you create policy which has a long-term impact on people per se. UPI is just one example. I mean, the government also started, this government, which came in 2014, started the world's largest toilet program. Now, you'll think that it's very absurd to talk about toilets, but for a country of a size and scale, one of the biggest issues was women hygiene and women's safety.
Yes.
Now, if that's 50% of a country's population, if you want the country to grow and prosper, you need the other half or the better half to grow as well.
100%.
And now, if I talk about our forefathers, especially about Mahatma Gandhi, he was very big on cleanliness. He was very big on hygiene. Now, this was done to finish open defecation, which was a very serious problem in India. And 111 million toilets were built in the last 9 years.
Wow.
So you not only did it basically give a sense of security, but it also gave them the basic dignity and respect that women deserve. When you have to change society, when you have to change a country, it has to start right at the bottom. You have to empower women, you have to empower people, you have to empower the classes which are the have-nots, who do not have what the other people in the cities and the urban centers have. And that's how the transformation of a country happens.
Yes.
And that is why these programs are so important. 115 million households have got direct water supply. Now, this is something which we take for granted in the West and many other parts of the world. But it matters. People who don't get it, have started getting it, definitely makes a difference, because just imagine the journey of a person in rural India who has to walk about an hour to go fetch some water. And every time they run out of water, they have to do the same thing. So, these are things which actually help uplift the most weakest sections of society. And those are the kind of changes which have been bottlenecks for India as a country. And that is what has been systematically being addressed by this government through policy.
Wow. That's, you bring up this very fascinating point. I remember I was in a very small village of India, and someone asked this question to a lady saying, why do you like our current prime minister? And she said, oh, because he built toilets. And a friend of mine was just so taken aback. She was like, how can that be a reason to vote for someone? And the lady broke down. She said, I would have to control until it was sunset to step out and use the grounds to relieve myself. Because the only time women could go would be either early in the mornings or late in the evenings. We couldn't go there during the daytime because, again, socially it's not acceptable, and we didn't have toilets. So
it's not just the socio-economic impact on women. It's also the crime against women has reduced significantly because of that.
Yes.
So it comes up in multiple manifestations. It's just not one advantage. It's so many of them. So I think, we have to, when you talk about India, you have to look at it from a very different lens. You have to see and understand the problems that plague a country like India. And once you understand those, you will understand what is it that the government has been doing and how successfully they've been able to do that.
Yes, correct. To build onto that, I think I know your interest in, empowering women. And could you talk a little more about, for a lot of people who don't know, India just recently passed this women empowerment bill in our parliament, which basically, reserves certain number of seats for women participating. I could be wrong, but could you tell us a little more about that? And
there was a special session of the parliament which was called, and we just passed the historic bill on women's reservation, granting 33% reservation to women in all elected bodies. It was already there in the rural areas and the local bodies, but in the parliament and the assemblies, that by virtue of 33% reservation, 33% elected representatives will only be women. Now, let me give you a perspective on this. This has been something which has been tried all over the world for the longest time, but it hasn't happened. I remember there was a UNDP report in 1995 which said that this should have been implemented, something like this should have been implemented worldwide, but it hasn't happened. Now, while we had a first women prime minister almost 50 years back, but we've still not seen the real impact for it to come down and percolate down. Because, see, what happens is in a country like India where women are basically a catalyst for your house, for the entire society, they have not been able to come in the mainstream. And there are a number of examples which say that women are a very good administrators and a very good decision makers, and they bring in new perspectives. So when you come to lawmaking and legislation, getting their perspective is extremely important because, we're not doing any favors to them. It's just that the minimum amount of women in the parliament should be 33%.
Yes.
Right now we have about 80 members of parliament out of a house of 527 in the Lok Sabha. And in the upper house, in the Raj Sabha, we have about 30 odd members of parliament in a house of 247. So it definitely empowers them. And when women are empowered, the country, communities are also empowered with it. Because, we are at a time where The world is at a, at a very, very, how should I put it? The world is at a very negative place. There's war, there's conflict, what we need is the healing touch of a woman. And that's something which will definitely help us when it comes into legislation as well.
That's superb. Wow, 33%. Uh, Switching gears a little bit, and I think these will be my last questions before we kind of, open it up. I know that you run this media house. I also know you run hotels. I also know that you run a distillery. Santi was just asking if he could try Indri. He read about
Absolutely, why not?
How do you kind of balance all of this with public life, right? There's a lot of time management, conflict, etc. So how do you manage that?
See, I guess it's not rocket science. You just have to prioritize. You need to know what is what in your pecking order, what needs to go into first, second, third, and at the same time, what is it that your purpose is. When it comes to the businesses, there are structures in place and there are management people in place. They definitely do a good job, and the boards review the companies, and there's a structured approach. Bulk of my time goes into politics now because that's where you're actually making a change and bringing some good to society. When you help a girl child or when you help someone who comes from a economically weaker background and you affect their lives in multiple ways, it's a very gratifying feeling. And I think while success can be measured in politics in terms of what offices you occupy, I think the biggest gratification is that you're being able to bring in some change which affects not only people right now, but generations to come. And that is the role of a lawmaker, which I'll tell you an example. When we were just elected, we went in batches to meet the Honorable Prime Minister. And we were about 20 odd of us, and we were interacting with him. And he said something very pertinent, which sort of stuck with me. He said, I didn't know whether I'll become a prime minister or not. I didn't even know whether I'll become a chief minister. But when we started out as political workers, we used to really think that I wish we could get to that office of a member of parliament or a member of legislative assembly. And it really saddens me when some people, when they get to that office, they don't take the job seriously. Because that's an opportunity that they get. And people have voted for you, invested their faith in you, and what are you doing with that? Somewhere, that stuck with me. And at that point of time, I had to sort of decide that what do I need to prioritize? Do I need to run my businesses or do I need to do politics? So yes, I do spend a certain portion of my time running my businesses, which is important to me because that's my baby. I started from scratch. But they are in it at that stage, when a child gets 18 years old, they're pretty good to go on their own. And it's like that. So now this is what my focus and mainstay is. If your priorities are clear, if your focus is clear and you know what you want to do and where you want to reach, I think it's not difficult to manage.
I see. Okay. Very interesting. My last question, kind of following up on that, is if you had to leave us with a few thoughts on what your key leadership principles are, and what you kind of put in your daily lives, what would that message be, and what are those principles?
See, I don't think you can be everything to everyone. So you need to pick your battles, pick your areas where you want to do something and make a substantive change in it. We are the youngest country in the world. The average age in India is about 28 years. And with more than 65% of our population under the age of 35, my focus is on the youth. And what can we do for them? Whether it's education, whether it is skilling, whether it is employment creation, whether it is the healthcare, sports, and so on and so forth. Within that subset. Because today, whatever investment we are making in the youth of the country is what we will reap in the years to come. So, like the Prime Minister says that, we are 75-year-old country now. And we need to make a roadmap. Where do we get when we are 100 years old? Where do we reach by that point of time? Sure. I mean, in 2014, we were the 10th largest economy in the world. Today, we are the 5th largest economy in the world. If we are growing at 6 to 7% year on year, if things keep on going the way they are, by the end of next year, we should be the 3rd largest economy in the world. So, it has to be, you have to bring about the change right from where it matters. If the youth of the country will be empowered, if they'll be educated, if they'll have skill sets, and that's being done through multiple things. It's not just one aspect of thing, like the new education policy in India, which focuses very largely on vocational training, skilling, upskilling, giving new skill sets. Because, our problem is very different from many other countries because we have 1.4 billion people.
Yeah.
Everyone can't become a doctor and an engineer. So you have to have alternatives of employment, and that is what is being done by the education setup as well, so that people can actually get an employment after an education.
Yes.
So, tackling those problems as such. So skill development is one, employment is the other. I mean, if you look at just the statistics as of May 31st, we have 108 unicorns in India. And that is also because a very conducive startup environment has been created. Now, bulk of these people who have developed these unicorn companies are not necessarily coming from the metro cities. They are coming from the B, C category towns as well. They might have not had the best education in the quote unquote, the traditional terms, but they have an idea, they have a concept, and the ability to convert that idea and concept into reality. That is what the Startup India campaign is doing for them. So multiple things like that is what is about to bring about change in India. I think India has a bright future with a very, very young population, and that's what my focus is.